Hello everyone, I'm David Rose and this is my life. You're standing in my museum, in my room of memorabilia. Here you'll find pictures of my family, my race car experiences, some of my art, military memorabilia, gifts that people have given me, my Ranger memorabilia, and just a whole lot more. There's a lot here to see and learn about. I wish that each of you could be here personally for me to give you a personal tour, but obviously that is not possible. So let's get started. In that top left corner is my great-great-grandfather, Isaac Rose. He served in the Civil War in Pennsylvania as an infantryman, a rifleman. That's his daughter, my great-grandmother, next to him. And my picture from military school. I attended Florida Military School in DeLand, Florida. And I won't go through all my family, but we're all here, 7 generations. My parents, Ray Rose and Betty Rose, our family there, that's probably taken in the 50s. And here is 7 generations of Roses. Derek, my son, myself on the right, my dad seated, and my grandson in his lap. That's Caden. So we're all here. Some more pictures of me down there. And this is my son Derek's family and his son Caden. And some of my race car pictures. That's an '89 Pontiac Trans Am GTA. I raced it at Road Atlanta and all over the Southeast, really. Had a lot of fun with it. This is my racing suit here. And I'm a concert classical guitarist. You'll see some of my albums a little bit later. And my lifelong friend, Barbara Morris. We started singing and performing together, I think, when we were 5 or 6. When we were 6, we competed in a citywide talent show, I think it was. And we just happened to win grand prize. We won 5 silver dollars. That was a lot of fun. After retiring my second time, I decided to travel for a while. So for 5 years, off and on, I was on the road traveling all over the country. I bought a little supercharged Toyota pickup and a trailer along the way. We started out in a tent, and my wife and I traveled east to west, north to south. We had a good time. You can see all the roads that we covered. Not all of these roads were covered in this 5 years, but a lot of them. But these are the roads that I have traveled during my life. And we ended up at Sequoia National Park just to camp. And I talked to a ranger there for about an hour, and he said, "David, do you want a job? It's a volunteer job. I can't pay you anything, but we sure need you." So we ended up staying the entire summer in Sequoia National Park. We never left the park. And we were campground hosts in a campground that had never had a campground host, and it was quite rowdy and unruly, and we had a big job ahead of us. But we had a good time. We learned a lot, and consequently, after that gig that summer, I went back to college and qualified to apply as a U.S. park ranger. And that's what I did for the next 5 years. I have post-war PTSD. A buddy of mine suggested I go to Washington State and meet with a Sioux Nation medicine man. That's him there in the middle of that picture. And I did that and spent 24 hours with him in an interview. And he said, "David, I think I can help you." He said, "Be here tomorrow and I'll have a sweat for you." So I showed up, we had the sweat, and it was quite powerful and interesting. And as a result, the Sioux Nation adopted me into their nation, and my name is Wambali Iskma, which in English is translated to eagle's wing. And the picture down here in the bottom is me giving the medicine man a gift after the sweat lodge. It was a full array red-tailed hawk tail feather, and he gave me this Native American cap here. It's very valuable to me. That was a fun experience. Up here is my 4-year-old grandson. He's being inducted as a fireman in Colorado Springs, Colorado. He's an honorary fireman. They made his own suit to fit him. His little fireman's cap or hat has his name on it, and it's pretty cool. The mayor was there and declared him the first Colorado Springs honorary fireman. It was quite the deal. My son, when he was growing up, played a lot of Nintendo and video games. He still plays them today. But anyway, I used to play the games with him, and I kind of quit, but he kept going. And so one day I wrote this poem for him, about him, and I want to share it with you. Play Mario Brothers with my son. Always felt excited when I won. I started feeling guilty though. Such a waste of time, you know. My son kept playing on. Sometimes he played till dawn. I criticized him once. Now I feel like a dunce. He's an officer in the Air Force now. I hope he can forgive me somehow. He controls satellites today. Mario Brothers helped pave the way. All that game time was not lost. He protects our country at all cost. Thank you, Captain Rose. Following an appearance, I was loading the hot rod back into the trailer, and this feeble man approached me holding this piece of paper, and he said, "Sir, can I help you in any way?" I walked over to him and stopped what I was doing and said, "No. What do you have?" And he said, "This is a newspaper article about me." He said, "I want you to have it." And so I accepted it and took it, and we talked for a while. After I got home, I read the article and immediately called him and asked him if I could video record an interview with him. And so I went to his apartment, I set up my cameras and just let them roll for 3 hours, and he sat there and talked. And out of that, I got 10 minutes of a story of how he escaped from a prisoner of war camp in Cambodia. I have a video of it on YouTube. I highly recommend that you view it. It's very interesting. He's passed away now. I have authored 16 books. They're not all here. I'm working on my 17th book now, but there are a few of them here. This is one of my most powerful, Some Wounds Don't Bleed. It started out as a journal account of my PTSD journey in my counseling with the VA, and it's grown into quite the book. Another book, I Gave My All for You, My Heavenly Experience. Vietnam War, Medal of Honor. I wrote a book about my ranger experiences in Yosemite National Park. I did a lot of photography then, and I have a photography book, See Yosemite National Park. Very few words, mostly pictures. A therapy book, The Power of Pen to Paper, Writing to Cope with PTSD. It's an instructional book for post-war veterans to teach them how to utilize writing to document and archive their thoughts and feelings, and as a result, figure out who they are. So you want to be a park ranger. It's a description of how to become a U.S. park ranger at age 60. A couple of albums that I recorded. My classical guitar, recorded that in 1984. That was even pre-CD. And I performed comedy professionally for about 10 years, and this is one of my albums of comedy. These are some poems that I've written. I do a lot of competition with poetry online, compete with other poets all over the world. And these are a few of my first place winners right here that are some of my favorites. There's a lot here on this shelf. I won't go through everything, but there are some important points that I do want to make. This is a frag from the Vietnam War that took down our helicopter and wounded my pilot. And we were recovered and taken back to the emergency room where I worked. And I removed the frag from my pilot's leg, and we acquired another helicopter, and we were flying back within an hour to recover more injured troops. This is the lighter that I used in Vietnam. It says David Rose. On the back is engraved, "At times I was so lonesome that I took some comfort there." Paul Simon, the boxer. When I was leaving home to go to the Vietnam War, as I was walking out the door, my mother gave me a Bible, and it was nicely bound. It had a zipper all the way around it, had my name engraved on it. And every time I had my uniform on, I had this in my upper left pocket. It's been wet, it's been dirty, there's blood all over it, but it was a comfort to myself and many of us through the tour of my duty in Vietnam. But through all that this has been through, not one page is missing from this Bible. It's completely intact. This is one of my prized possessions, I have to say. It's very simple. It's just sunflower seeds. I was speaking at the Wall in Washington, D.C. one time, and after I spoke, a gentleman asked to come back and talk to me. Turned out he was a 2-star general, and he said, "David, I want you to have these." He said, "This is the last of my stash." He said, after World War II, we went into Hiroshima to evaluate the damage, and there in the center of all of that damage was one living thing, and it was a sunflower plant, and it was healthy, it was huge. And he said, "These are some sunflower seeds from that plant." And he said, "I want you to have them. It's a tribute to you and what you do for veterans." So it's extremely valuable to me. After all this time, 75 years, I guess, I have sacrificed one of these seeds and planted it just a couple of weeks ago, just in hopes that some miracle happens and it will grow a plant. If that does happen, then I'm going to give out descendants of these seeds to other veterans to honor them. This is my personal challenge coin. It has a picture of my Vietnam Veteran Tribute hot rod on it, and also my Florida Veterans Hall of Fame medallion on the back. We'll talk about that later. Lots of challenge coins here. each one has its own story, but there are a couple that I'm really proud of that I want to talk about. This was given to me when I was inducted into the Florida Veterans Hall of Fame, given to me by the governor, Rick Scott. Now he's the senator for Florida. This one is incredibly valuable to me. This was given to me by General Jackson. He's with the Department of Defense Vietnam War 50th commemoration. And you'll see his picture and a letter that he wrote to me in a little bit here. Twice when I was a Ranger, I received Excellence in Performance awards, and I won that award 2 years out of 5. And my supervisor said, "David, I can't give you that award every year." So anyway, that was a lot of fun. Let's see. My good friend Leo Thorsness, here it is, yes. He's a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, and he spoke in Chattanooga at the National Medal of Honor Museum, where I volunteer. And while he was there, he recognized me and gave me his challenge coin. He's deceased now, but he wrote the foreword in my book, Vietnam War Medal of Honor. A great gentleman. I could talk for a long time, but I guess I'll end it for now. This is a business card for a band that I owned. It was called the Journeymen. It was my first rock band. I think this was 1964, 63 maybe. And we played all over town in Orlando. We were really good. I threw out a first pitch for the Chattanooga Lookouts in 07, I think it was. This is a card case that I carried with me in my park ranger uniform, and I had these trading cards that I would give to people, and a lot of links to websites and so forth, and a description of my park ranger resume there. This is a bear skull, a black bear, that I used for education purposes. In the evenings, I would go to the campground and lecture about bears in the amphitheater there. That was one of my favorite things that I did as a ranger. I also guided hikes, and these are some of the Native American items that I carried with me on my hike, and I would lecture about them at various different stops along the way. And it was quite effective. People appreciated it. I have a doll likeness. I got to know a couple in the campground. They came camping there for 2 weeks every year. And this lady makes doll clothes. And after she met me, she started making ranger doll clothes. And I came to the campground one year, and she had this doll. She came running up. She said, Ranger Dave, look what I made for you." And so I have a doll likeness now, Ranger Dave doll. She sells these along the California coast at high-end gift shops, I think. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's pretty cool. Ranger Dave doll. People give me all kinds of things. I was enjoying supper at the Columbia restaurant and discovered that there was a veteran and his family sitting next to me. And we started talking, and he learned about my hot rod and what I did for veterans and everything. And so he decided it was a good idea to give me a cigar. So I still have it today since I don't smoke. And The family on the other side of me overheard our conversations, and they ordered a bottle of wine for me and had it sent to my table. And come to find out that he's active duty major in the Army. So that was quite a special moment. Other things that people give me, the Advent Health sponsored my ticket to the Daytona 500 recently, and so some memorabilia from them. That was a real special time. And wrote a book for my beautiful wife, a book of poetry, My Tennessee Athens Girl. When I was about 8 years old, I started oil painting lessons. And that one in the top left corner, I painted when I was 8 years old. And the one on the right, I painted when I was 8 years old. The one on the left is in the foyer of Barbara Morris's house. The one on the right is in the foyer of my Aunt Dot's house. And those are not the originals, those are prints. And the flowers, I think I was 9 when I painted those. And they were damaged along with years. And these are prints also. But this is my last remaining original. I painted this when I was 13. Last picture I painted before I started discovering the classical guitar. And that's really valuable to me. But it was a lot of fun. And my first wife and I, Claudia, built this house together. It's a log house in Nashville, Tennessee. We disassembled and moved 27 buildings for materials to build this house. And it was quite a task. It took us 2 years. And we decided that we wanted our house and our property to be enjoyed by more people than just us. So we wanted to give back to everybody for the blessings that we were enjoying. So we started producing a music festival in our front yard. It was called Rosewood Music Festival. Rosewood is the primary acoustic wood in a classical guitar. And so these are a few pictures from that music festival. We started about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and went until 11 o'clock at night. And it was video recorded and uplinked to satellite, and it was a pretty big deal. We had as many as 2,500 people in our front yard, and we fed everybody. So pretty cool. When I was volunteering with the National Medal of Honor Museum, I was a guide there, volunteered for 8 years, and I had the opportunity to attend a Medal of Honor annual get-together, some kind of a conference. And I was sent there by the museum, and I was able to acquire all of the living Medal of Honor recipient signatures from the Vietnam War. I have 37 of them, and it's extremely valuable to me. Pretty cool. And then up here are some of the hot rods that I have owned over my lifetime. That's my second hot rod. I was 13 years old there. And my first one was a 31 Ford Coupe with a Chevy V8 engine in it. And over the years, these are cars that I've owned. There's Claudia, my first wife, with my 65 Buick Skylark high output engine, Muncie 4-speed. And the fastest hot rod that I've ever driven is that little red one right there. Woo, scary. And some more. That little car looks benign, but it is not. That is a neon ACR. ACR means American Club Racing. Ford Vicky, 1933. And a benign looking little Falcon, but it's a high output 289 with a 4-speed in it, a little rowdy car. This is a quilt that was made for me by a very, very special friend. Thank you, Abigail. And she didn't know how to quilt, but she knew that she wanted to make a quilt for me. So she took a class and she learned how to quilt. And she made this and gave it to me in 2017. And I think this is the only quilt she has ever made. Extremely valuable to me. And this is kind of a story of my life, I guess, starting in high school and Florida Military School, and then the Vietnam War, surgery for 35 years, and then internet business, park ranger, and ultimately the Florida Veterans Hall of Fame. And speaking of that, here we are, my certificate for the Hall of Fame. And here I am in these pictures being greeted by the governor, Rick Scott, and being inducted into the Hall of Fame, along with my class of 2018. And here it is. There's my medallion. It's a great honor for me to participate in this program. We created a society, and I'm a board member, and I'm secretary of the society, the webmaster, author, and creator of a lot of things for the Hall of Fame. Front and center in my little museum, of course, is my favorite picture of Jesus. And next to Jesus is an article and front page picture from Veteran Voice publication. That came out the week after I was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And there are special things down here on the floor that I'll get down and talk to you about. My son's in the Air Force. When he was enlisted, he's now a captain, but before he went to officers training school, he was deployed to Iraq. And somehow he was involved in drones there for a short time at least. And in the mission that my son participated in, the mission was flown in my name, in my honor, as a Vietnam War veteran. And this flag in this case was carried in the drone on the war mission. And when the mission was completed, they removed the flag from the drone, and the captains of the drone sent me and signed this certificate of authenticity of the mission having been flown in my honor. And it's one of my most prized earthly possessions, I have to say. Thank you, Derek, for doing that. This is a little shadow box of my son's Air Force career. He started out enlisted and then went to officers training school. I don't have all of his bars. That's his first lieutenant bar. He's now a captain. The gold wings he wore on his hat in officers training school. If I remember this correctly, if your father was a war veteran, you got gold wings. If he was not, then you had silver wings. And when my son replaced those wings with his bar, he gave me the wings. So it's really valuable to me. And I gave him his first salute when he became an officer, and he gave me this coin as a momentum of that event. It's very special. I co-own several trademarks. This is one that I have called The Strongest Memory Wins. It's the title of our company. I had a partner, Dr. Lane, and we were working on procedures to help post-war PTSD veterans with their problems. He passed away last year. The company is defunct now. Big loss, and but we still have the trademarks. This is my shadow box from the Vietnam War. Upper left is the arm patch for the 7th Medical Brigade, and my rank was Spec 4, E4. I was invited to participate in advancement boards and all of this. I could have left there in E6, but I didn't want to have anything to do with it. That's a picture of me doing surgery in the emergency room at age 20. The emergency room patch on the right, on the left is the dust off patch. I flew dust off as a medic, TDY. And the little medals that I won during the Vietnam War, nothing special. Everybody won those. So that's it. And down in the right corner, if I can get there, there you go. That's my baggage claim for my flight back to the world. Ha. Here are more cars that I've owned over my lifetime. I used to be a manager for a race team, Southern Thunder. That was a pro mod supercharged alcohol car. Wildly, wildly powerful and fast. That was a lot of fun. And my favorite hot rod ever is that 29 Ford truck. That was really a cool hot rod. I drove that from Tennessee to Florida and back many times. There I am in the Toyota, just starting out in a tent before I bought the trailer. We were in Texas. We had a big storm come through. It blew our tent away, and I knew then it was time to grow up and get a hard side trailer. And there's my veteran hot rod. You'll learn more about that in just a minute. It's a 46 Chevy Corvette crate engine, Corvette front suspension, and a custom frame. Vietnam veterans, welcome home. If you haven't figured it out by now, I have no windows in my room. I don't have room for windows. I draped these quilts over them so that I could display them properly. I was speaking in Washington, D.C. and awarded a lot of Vietnam veterans with lapel pins and certificates for their service. And after that, the Washington, D.C. Quilts of Valor group called me back up on stage and awarded this quilt to me. And it was a great honor to receive it. They did a very good job of presenting it to me, and it's a valued possession of mine today. Very cool. Back in 2017, I co-wrote the lead article for a journal from the Ethical Human Psychology and Psychiatry publication. It was an article about my post-war PTSD, and I think as a result of that, 3 years ago, I was awarded the International Society of Ethical Psychology and Psychiatry Mary Karen Memorial Award for humanitarian concerns and reaching out to others. I was awarded that for my Vietnam and veteran work that I do. And that's one of my, probably one of my best awards. I'm really proud of that. And then up in the upper right corner is an award of appreciation from the National Medal of Honor Museum in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I volunteered with them for 8 years and did a lot of work for them. These are just some certificates and awards and various different things. These are my lapel pins for degrees in medicine that I have. certifications and awards and so forth that I acquired over 35 years of doing surgery. And these are some other awards and pins that I acquired along the way, businesses that I've had, and jobs and hobbies that I've had. Written a lot of articles. This is an article about model cars that was published in Japan. And I wrote about model car building in hot rod magazines here in America also. My son and I had a website development business together for a while. And at one point, he was the youngest corporate president in the state of Tennessee, and the youngest of other things as well. But when we built the website for the Chattanooga Lookouts, that put us on the map. And that's when I retired from surgery and jumped into the internet business full time. And this is an article about us, and Derek's picture is there, having developed the Chattanooga Lookouts first website. That was back in 2000, I think it was. And in our business, this is how we got started right here. Web tech. And back then we had a 3-inch floppy disk and a manual computer and my glasses and all that. And here's our first computer quote that I bought for my son. I forget the year, but this came from Circuit City. And there's our first computer quote written on the back of a business card. The salesman said, if you'll upgrade from 4 megs of RAM to 8 megs of RAM, he said, you'll never need to upgrade RAM again. Wow. Through a lifetime, these are some of the name tags that I've earned and acquired and accumulated. I guess the best one is Director of Surgery right there. I had fun with that. And pretty cool. My good friend Bob Wade and I took a week and did a road trip together doing car guy stuff. And we went to Rick Hendrick's museum around Charlotte, North Carolina. And in the museum, lo and behold, was this right rear tire from Jimmie Johnson's car when he won in Bristol in 2017. That's the last race that Jimmie Johnson has won. And it sits here in my little museum. That's his car right there on top of it. All right, we're getting into park ranger stuff. That's obviously a grizzly bear and a black bear hide. I use these in my education lectures about bears. And it's a lot of fun. It's very meaningful, very educational, and everybody has fun too. But whenever I would speak, I'd go around and put these posters up all over the camp and invite people to come. And these are my certifications for being a U.S. park ranger. There's EMT, certified as an interpretive guide, and some other things. I met a gentleman who owns a road company. He lays blacktop, and he lives around Yosemite. And he said, Ranger Dave, I find arrowheads all the time. And I said, well, bring me some next time you come up here. So he did. And these are some of the arrowheads that he found and gave to me. Pretty cool. And these are just some snapshots of me lecturing in the park and doing what I do, park ranger, interpretive park ranger, not law enforcement. Excuse me, my job was to talk to people. That's what I did all day. I led 5 different hikes on 5 different trails and lectured out at Glacier Point and a lot of other things. This is a signed photograph of Ansel Adams' picture of Mount Whitney, the highest point in the continental United States. Those are medallions from 5 points that I hiked in Yosemite National Park. There's Half Dome, Mount Hoffman, Clouds Arrest, Mount Dana, that's my favorite, and Sentinel Dome. That's also, I have to say, one of my favorites. So there's Ranger Dave and some of my hats. And this is the backpack that I carried with me all the time. These 2 pictures are not mine. They were given to me by a very good friend. The Horsetail Fall is a picture that is available to take one day, I think, in February for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, if the conditions are right. First of all, there has to be water coming over the waterfall, and then there has to be clear skies and no clouds, and if you're lucky, you'll get this shot. And he got it, and it's a really good picture. And he's an astrophotographer, and that is the eclipse of the sun. Great, great photograph. All right, that's it for the Ranger stuff. Let's go to veteran. I co-starred in a movie called Iron Will. It's about post-war PTSD. And right now it's traveling from VA to VA facility all over the country. And it's very meaningful, very nicely produced. We debuted the movie in 2016 at a film festival in Minneapolis. And the movie was sold out, and we won first place in the festival. And after the movie was over, nobody left. They just sat there. So the producers called me up, and I fielded questions from the audience. That's me in front of the white screen right there, and pictures of some of the producers out in the lobby. But it was quite powerful, I have to say. This is a poem that I wrote called Blood on My DD-214. DD-214 are my discharge papers from the military. I think it's very ironic that I was a medic in the war, and somehow I got blood on my discharge papers. It's like booting me in the butt as I go out the door. But 50 years I had to think about that, and then one day it came to me, and I just sat down and wrote it in 10 minutes. And there you go. But that's a signature of the longest imprisoned POW in the Vietnam War. That's my favorite Medal of Honor recipient, Pat Brady. A few years ago, I purchased and operated the Vietnam Veteran Welcome Home tribute truck. And my friend and I, Fred Cole, and as well as others who joined our team a little bit later, you'll meet them soon, we campaigned this truck all over Central Florida. And we made appearances at car shows and veteran events, and we invited veterans to sign the truck, and it was quite a meaningful tribute to them. And we just wanted to give back to our Vietnam veterans, and I think that was a very effective way to do that. One of our sponsors was Dana Meekum. He owns Meekum Car Auction, and he also has a magazine about cars, and they featured the hot rod in their magazine. It's pretty cool. Here's our full team. There's Dr. Tom Morrell and Sue Morrell, Fred Cole, and myself. Here we are at the Daytona International Speedway during the turkey run. And we acquired, I think, probably 300 signatures on the truck that weekend and awarded 250 Vietnam War 50th commemoration lapel pins. That was a big weekend. And here we are at the track also. We deploy a flag on the truck, the American flag with the Vietnam War 50th commemoration flag directly under it. This is General Jackson, the Executive Director of the Department of Defense Vietnam War 50th commemoration. He sent me this note of gratitude for me doing what I do for veterans. That was a great honor for me to receive that. These are some of my friends. Colonel Leo Thorsness, Medal of Honor recipient, is deceased now. I showed you his challenge coin a little bit earlier. Charles Coolidge from Chattanooga, World War II, Medal of Honor recipient. And Sam Davis, and quite a story he has. So it's a great honor to be associated and in the same room with these gentlemen. I received from Rick Scott, then the governor of the state of Florida, a war commendation medal. Here I am receiving it, and he signed my picture for me. Other medals that I've won from the VA are Festival of Arts. Every year they ask veterans to submit their creativity. It might be a poem, it might be a song, it might be a painting, it might be woodwork, a carving, model cars, anything. There's a big category, even dance. But I submitted one year and won 3 awards: bronze, silver, and gold. And one was for a poem, another one was for a video veteran documentary that I recorded and produced, and another one was for a song, a veteran song that I wrote. So that's valuable to me. Another picture of me doing surgery in Vietnam in the emergency room at the 71st Evac Hospital. This box belongs to a friend of mine, John Rao, and he donated it to my little museum here. And it's a Mars box. When we were in Vietnam, you could submit a little card with no more than 25 words on it. And somebody would ham radio your message around the world, and somebody would pick it up and get a message to your loved one anywhere in the world. And we didn't have cell phones back then. We didn't have the internet. And this was our way of communicating with our family and friends. It worked. I've heard people say that this picture helped end the Vietnam War. Picture of that little girl running away from her village that was just napalmed. She had the clothes burned off of her. Her backside was totally crisp and burned. She survived and escaped Cuba and went to Canada. And now she operates a foundation assisting war orphans to find them a home and solve the problems that they have. And she sent me this signed picture, and I'm very, very proud of it. Thank you, Kim. When I was a medic in Vietnam, I worked, well, I had 2 days off a month. And on my days off, I volunteered to hike to 5 different mountain yard villages to do a sit call. And a mountain yard is a highland native who is not really involved in the war. They're neutral, they hate communism, and they were our friends. They even helped us fight once in a while. They're great warriors, but they're very primitive. And so every day for 2 days a month, I'd hike out in the jungle to their village and help them out a little bit. Sometimes I bring back patients to be treated at our hospital. But before I could go see anybody as a patient, I had to first stop at the elder's hut. And I had to sit with them and talk with them as best I could. And I had to drink with them. And they set up these rows of rice wine pots. And here I am right here, sitting there drinking through a straw, and the elders are laughing at me. And so I had to drink probably 4 or 5 different pots and before I could see patients. And you do that 5 times in 5 different villages, and you're not walking straight. But I did it, and I played their little game, and it was all good. There's the chief of the village right there. And these are some artifacts that I acquired that were given to me, or I purchased some of them, and some of the mountain yard crafts and tools that they use to survive. That basket is just absolutely amazing what the ladies do. They carry everything in that basket. And crossbow, there's a sheath with arrows in it. And those long canes are flutes. They're actually musical. And that blade right there is very, very old. And they used it to lance arteries and bloodlet. And right there is the bucket where they would let their blood, and they thought that it was healing them, getting the evil spirits out of their system. But it's pretty wild what some people believe. There you go, mountain yards. There I am being interviewed on radio in Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is a veteran friend of mine who was recovering from psych meds, and he couldn't walk as a result of his withdrawals. So I made him a cane with Iraqi camo on it and flames, and he loved it. So he sent me this marine lure along with a picture of him. He's a fishing guide in Maryland. And some pictures of me and different performances that I've done. There I am at the log cabin with my guitar. And my first comedy album and classical guitar. In college, I played bass for a group called the Esquires. We did Letterman type music, and that was a lot of fun. In grade school and high school, I was a member of a male quartet, the Messengers. Bob Wade, Ron Brown, Jim Tisler, and me. I sang bass, and we toured all over, singing in churches and different functions. That was great fun. Here I am with my guitar in Vietnam. And another picture of me with my guitar. Well, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for watching this video, especially all the way to the very end. But it was informal, and I hope the shaky camera didn't make you sick or anything, but it's all I had to work with. And so Thank you for paying attention and stopping by.